Ryan has to hardwire his computer.
You know what?
What?
Yeah, I know. From like, you are a saint, man. Like, I can't believe you're not like, having stored 50 minutes ago.
Here's the thing. So back in March, when all of this shit, like, when the shit hit the fan here in the States, I don't know when the shit hit the fan there in Canada, but here it was in March when the shit hit the fan. And I had to try to start doing remote lessons. And I had numerous students who sat with me while I like toiled and turned trying to get shit to work. So I can relate. And so, yes, it's all good. It's all good.
Well, yeah, I really appreciate it. And so we got
about 5 minutes left, by the way. So,
yeah.
Hey, how are you, best buddies? It's been a while. Good to see you. Thanks for being here. Welcome back to the show. You're listening to your number one drum-themed podcast, Hitmakers, broadcasting out of St. John, New Brunswick, Canada. I'm your host. My name is Ryan. I feel like I need a stage name, but that is my birth name, so here we go. How you doing? New year, new me. That's what I got myself a little script here that I've written. New year, new me. New season, new continuing our season 3, which has been our surprising one. As a result of the coronavirus, everybody being locked indoors. I wasn't doing these. I'd only ever done them in person before. But I've discovered the internet. And here we are. To that end, as you know, because you already clicked on the thing, our guest today is Mr. Nate Morton. He is the drummer in the house band of NBC's The Voice, which you can watch on CTV here in Canada. We get into this. I haven't had cable, so I hadn't seen this season. I'm kind of glad I hadn't because I might have been more nervous, although I was already fairly nervous. He's in LA on the West Coast. I'm in St. John on the East Coast. So we did this at 8 p.m. his time, which was midnight my time. And we were doing it over Zoom. And we fired up. And he starts breaking up, cutting in and out. And we tried different things. He's like changing devices. I tried this browser-based thing. In the end, what it took was me just moving up to a different room, plugging my computer directly into the modem. We had a tech in here, ironically, is the same company that carries the TV show, but that's another story. But anyway, they moved the modem so I get better signal down here in my studio where I record, and didn't work. So you listen to the episode. He's very lively and animated. I sound like kind of bored and maybe low energy, but the reason is that I'm trying to keep my voice down because by the time we got this started, it was 1 a.m., and I was in the room directly below where my wife is sleeping. I was trying not to keep her awake. Didn't work. I don't have an indoor voice. And we went into the wee hours. But I was just having so much fun talking to this gentleman. Lovely dude. So his current gig is a drummer in the house band and The Voice. He's also toured with artists like Natalie Cole, Vanessa Carlton. He mentioned a few gigs casually in passing. One of them was he played in a high school band with Dave Sitek of TV on the Radio. I just thought, I was like, no way, it's the same guy. Must be a similar sounding name. But no, same dude. I looked it up afterwards, and they played on a David Byrne album together. He also casually mentions gigs with Santi Gold and the Eagles, Don Felder. All right, I'm almost out of time here, folks. If you want show notes, you want to learn more about what we do here, you can check. I got a website set up, learndrums.ca, Learn Drums on Instagram. You can find Nate at Nate Drums. That's N8DRUMZ, as we say here in Canada. Special thanks to Isaiah Gill for hooking this up. Isaiah, if you don't know, is a drummer from Houston. He plays with Black Flag, among others. We talked to him in the fall. We got 50-odd episodes. All right, here we go.
Do you have like an official like intro, like, hey, this is Ryan Brown, and here you are on Hitmakers Podcast. I'm with my buddy Nate Morton. Like, do you do that whole official thing?
No.
Or kind of did I just do it just then? Did I just do it right then for you already?
Yeah, you just made it happen.
No, usually I will add that after the fact. Like I record them and then I'll add an intro the week that I put it out.
Copy.
Yeah. So, but it's funny because it does make for like a weird like now it's official, because it used to be like previously I'd only done these in person, and then so it's like when you turn the mics on, that's really when it starts.
Right. Whereas we were like struggling with like an hour of technical glitches, technical glitchery. So that would be sad, because if this was like a 90-minute podcast, the first hour would be, wait, hold on, what? Can you hear me? Wait, hold on. Are you there? I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I think maybe what we'll do is make a supercut for the listener.
Director's edit.
Yeah,
this is
that's
the director's cut.
See how long we can push it before people tune out. Really, we'll really make some art here. Cool. Okay, sir. Thanks for being here, Nate Morton. Everybody.
Rock and roll.
All right, Mr. Mr. Nate Morton. Isaiah Skill hooked this up. How do you guys know each other?
I know Isaiah. Now, if you ask him this, he may have a different answer, because I'm not always great about remembering the origin of relationships. Yeah. But if memory serves correctly, I knew of Isaiah because I attended the Guitar Center drum-off, forgotten at this point. I'm not sure quite how long ago it was, but I attended the Guitar Center drum-off that he won, and was blown away by him, super impressed. I mean, I was about to say the kid's amazing, but he's not a kid anymore because this is years ago. So now, the dude is amazing, incredible player. And but in that same sort of time span, if memory serves, again, I'm kind of reaching here, but I think that I was quote unquote judging a Roland event, I think, or it was another drum off. I feel like it was a Roland event, and I feel like it was at the House of Blues. Mm-hmm. I could be completely imagining this whole darn thing. But long story short, I recognized him from the drum off, and I went up and I said, "Hey man, I saw you. I know exactly who you are. You sound great player." And to my shock, he actually knew who I was, which was surprising. And then I think that's when we met. I feel like it was the House of Blues in Anaheim. And maybe it wasn't a drum off event, but it was some sort of event or concert. And that's when I bumped into him the first time. I think so.
Right. Would he have been living?
Well, and just to tag on to that.
Yeah.
And drummers are kind of like a merry sort of chatting, bunch. Yeah. And so that was pretty much all it took. Like, I met him. He's a great dude. And we just kind of hit it off, and we've stayed in touch ever since.
That's what I found. I his was the first. It was the first like Zoom drum interview that I've done, and I found within like 5-10 minutes, I was like, oh, this guy reminds me of my brother.
Right. No, totally. Yeah. And I mean, and he's a great kid. Yeah. He's not a kid, but he's a great dude.
No, he's a sweet dude.
He'll always be a kid compared to me because I'm older than dirt, because I just turned almost 50. I turned 49 like a couple of days ago.
Congrats. So you turned 2020 ended with you turning 49, like the basically day before the year was over.
Pretty much. Yeah, yeah, that's about it. I was just telling someone earlier. So on this, I don't know how many of your listeners will be familiar with The Voice or not, but
I would say all of them.
Playing on that show, the finale occurs in the middle of December. And then you're straight into the holidays. There's madness with Christmas. And I have 6 kids in total, 5 of which live in the home here. Yeah. And so then there's the madness with Christmas holidays. And then it's into my birthday immediately. And then a day later is New Year's Eve. And so the end of every year feels like me sort of like crash landing into the next year. It's like this falling downstairs thing where you're trying to like catch your balance and you really kind of don't, and you kind of topple into the bottom of the stairs, and then that's the next year. That's kind of how every year is for me.
That's amazing. No, right? Isn't
it? You were speechless for a moment there.
A life grand. Yeah, I am. You got 5 kids?
I have 6 in total.
You have 6 kids.
5 who live here. Yes.
Wildest. Wildest. Are you from a big family?
I'm from the opposite of a big family. I'm an only child.
Oh,
and it was I never imagined that I would have, 6 kids, which I guess is considered to be a big family. It's funny because I work with my musical director, Paul Merkovich, who comes from a family of, if I'm not mistaken, 12 kids. So to me, like 6 kids is like, compared to that, it's like a starter family. It's like not even, it's like, it's like Fisher Price, my first family, where he has like the real deal dozen kids.
Yeah, that's like my dad's family. But so I'm the oldest of 6. It was, for me anyway, it was both like I grew up in a house of like, there just were always babies around.
Right.
Until I was 18 and, left and kind of like went to university. So I didn't completely leave. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That thing.
What's your span? What's your span of age? You're 38. So you're the oldest. What's the youngest?
Youngest, my brother James is 13 years younger than me. 25. 13. I was going to say 25.
So six in a span of 13 years.
Yeah, it's all 2 and 3 years apart. Copy.
Mine is a yours, mine, ours situation.
Yep.
So I have a 20-year-old. They're all mine now. And there's nothing more to be said about that.
Yeah.
But I have a 20-year-old from a previous.
Yep.
And then the 20-year-old I share with his mom. But I inherited an 18-year-old now. Mm-hmm. He's 18, a 14-year-old. And then my wife and I made together an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 3-year-old. So what's our span? So we have like a 17-year span. 3 to 20 is our timeline there.
So it's part of like, so for me, I also have deliberately like not wanted to have kids because I've always worried like, well, you can't be a musician, then you'll have to find something else to do. So how does that work in your world? I mean, you've got a pretty solid and local gig.
I am very fortunate. Very fortunate. I am very, 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 very fortunate. It's interesting. I always made my living primarily from touring from the time that I finished college in 1998 all the way up through around 2004, 2005. It was always touring. And even in 2005, 2006, I did a couple of TV shows, but then that led to playing with Cher at Caesar's Palace, which was a tour, sort of a touring in place. That was a residency where we would basically pop over to Vegas and do 5 weeks, and then we'd be off for 3 weeks. And then we pop over to Vegas and do 6 weeks, and then we'd be off for a month and a half. And then so though I was quote unquote touring by virtue of being out of the house, I was touring in place because when we went to Vegas, we had the same condo, the same spot. I got to know my surroundings and so on. So in terms of, family and kids and so on, I mean, there's unfortunately no easy answer to that. I mean, when I had my son Miles, I was touring, and if I'm honest, the first 2-3 years, it's really not that crazy. Like, I mean, this is going to sound very callous of me to say, but it's not that crazy being away, because for a child's first 2 years, generally minimally, and oftentimes 3, they're entirely wrapped up in mom. Like, it's all about mom. It's all, mom represents everything, right? Somewhere in the mid 3s going into 4, it starts to be like, oh, where are you going, Dad? Oh, Texas. It starts to become like, Australia. When are you gonna be back? A month and a half from now. Yeah. And then it starts to become harder to leave, and you start to miss more things and all of that. Tell you a funny quick story. So I'm on tour. Yeah. You're in Canada, so this is my Canada relating story. I'm on tour. I do not recall with whom, but I'm in Toronto, and I'm talking to my son Miles on the phone, and maybe he's like 8, 7 at this point. And I say to him, and his mom has told him that I'm on tour, and she told him that I'm in Toronto. And I'm talking to him. He said, Dad, where are you? Where are you? And I said, I'm in Canada. And he said, no, Toronto. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I would just never forget that. But yeah, it becomes hard. It becomes difficult, and you have to make a real serious, effort to. Well, I mean, I don't even know what to make the most of the time that you do have at home. It's very hard. I can tell that I'm old, Ryan, because I have lots of stories. Everything has a story to me. I recall talking to my friend Tony DiAugustine. He's a dear friend, outstanding drummer. He lives in New York and is currently, well, not currently, but pre-COVID and post-COVID, he's the drummer of the touring company of Jesus Christ Superstar.
Cool.
And so at the time that I met him, he lived in LA, and I came out one day. I lived in Boston at the time, and I was out in LA doing some sort of dates, playing with someone. And I said to him, Tony, what do you think is the hardest thing about being a professional musician? And I've told this several times. So to anyone who's ever heard me on another podcast or any other, medium tell this story, I apologize for my redundancy, but it's very profound, and it stayed with me and will always stay with me. I said, what's the hardest thing about being a professional musician? This is to your question, by the way, Ryan. And he said, balance.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I was about 26 or 7 at the time. I said, balance between what? And he said, balance between everything. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, you'll see. And every next day, week, month, year that I'm granted on this planet, I realize more and more and more what he meant. It literally is a balance between everything. It's a balance between, for example, as you just pointed out specifically, how do I be a musician and be a family guy at the same time?
Mm-hmm.
How do I tour and make money and earn a living and balance that with having time to be around to enjoy the living that I'm theoretically earning? Yeah. How do I balance the gig that pays the most versus the gig that is the most enjoyable and fulfilling for me? Because oftentimes they're not the same, you know? Yep. So it really is. So to your point about how do you, kids, family, musician, it's not an easy or a practical, advantageous sort of pursuit, but you just do have to really focus on that balance. So in my case, to bring this in for a landing, in my case with Miles, when I toured, I was away, I was gone. But when I was home for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and I knew I wasn't going anywhere for a while, I threw myself into being dad, and I was home all day. You know what I mean? Because I wasn't doing really gigs. And the nature of touring in LA, at least at that time, it may be different now. I haven't done it for a little while. But the nature of touring in LA is when you're gone, you're gone. But when you're home, no one knows you're home. So you're just home. Like, it's not like New York where there's constantly weekly gigs. It's not like being plugged into a constant, busy, local touring performing environment,
So you're just home, kind of.
You're home just being dad. Yeah, you're home. Exactly. You're home, at the age he was, you're dropping him off to preschool, first grade, second grade, and you're picking him up. And afterwards you're going to get an ice cream at Cold Stones. And, it's that. So, it's a challenge, but it's not insurmountable. Let me put it that way. It's not impossible.
Yeah, it's a thing I've been asking everyone. And I've got friends here who, tour and have kids for sure. Everything's been sidelined the last year, but I'm always curious how people navigate it. Because the other thing is, like, just with regard to balance, I would say that I am definitely somebody for whom, like, music, my band, whatever I was doing, like, when I was younger, that was the only thing that mattered in my life, like in what ultimately I learned was an unhealthy way. But there is the fear that if you let anything else in, that it's just like it'll all go away or something.
Sure. No. All I ever focused on was music. Yeah. There's a great Duke. I think it's Duke Ellington. I think it's a collection of Duke Ellington sort of anecdotes and quotes. I have a copy on my shelf that I got from the library I checked it out of the library and basically stole it at the time. This is many, many years ago because the book is out of print, or at least it was at the time.
Well, what are you supposed to do then?
Exactly. You steal it from a library.
Yeah.
Sorry. It's a book called Music is My Mistress.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and my first wife, when we first met and first sort of started, hanging out together or whatever, she basically at one point said to me, before we started dating, I realized immediately that I was only going to be at best number 2 to you in terms of importance relative to music. And I asked myself, am I okay with that? And I decided that I was, because that was my attitude at the time. It was like, when I moved to LA, I basically was like, hey, I'm moving to LA. I mean, you're welcome to join if you would like, or not.
This is what's happening.
But either way, this is what's happening. I moved to LA. Yeah, no, there's a fine, again, speaking of balance, there's a fine line between sort of being focused and, I don't know. I mean, there's a certain amount of self-centeredness that is a prerequisite for pursuing a career in music. And again, we are no longer together, Miles's mom and myself, but there are definitely lessons learned from that, and there are definitely things that I look back on and I realized how self-centered I actually was at the time. I mean, there was a time, well, I don't even want to say self-centered, but just focused on music. Like that was the thing,
I was self-centered for sure.
Yeah. I mean, we get on stage and we do what we do and we say, hey, watch us do what we do.
Yeah. Well, and I think also even just to put in the amount of practice that you need in order to go out and do it.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I was telling someone just the other day that when I was in college, like I'll have, the occasional, drink now or whatever. But when I was in college, I didn't drink. I didn't party. I didn't go to movies. I didn't hang out because I was practicing. I was always practicing. I was by myself in a room. My girlfriend at the time would have said like, hey, you want to see a movie? And I would have said, no, but I'll be done practicing around 10:30 if you want to hang out.
Right.
And again, it is about balance. And at that point, maybe I was a little out of balance, but it's kind of a pursuit of mine now as I am a little bit older to try to find a middle ground. And it's been great because my wife, Nicole, I've made it a point to spend more time focusing on that relationship. I've made it a point to spend more time focusing on my relationship with, my village. And it's been a great find, or it's been great sort of happenstance that I happen to be involved in a gig that is local that has allowed me the privilege of being able to sort of do that. So even if I'm, home after they go to bed, I can go in and be like, all right, good night, kiss on the forehead. Even if I'm leaving shortly after they go to school, I do get to see that they go off to school and I see them in the morning. So it's I've been very fortunate. I've been very, very fortunate for sure. And I like to think that I've learned from lessons of the past, and I would like to think that has affected in a good way my sort of values today.
Yeah.
And priorities today.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I think that's,
Has your living been made in terms of a musician primarily touring?
No, that's not really, except for a select few up here. That doesn't really exist. So it's a funny thing. Like it's primarily
harder to tour
teaching
in Canada, right? It's harder to tour because there's only a handful of cities and
so
a
far
grand
apart.
distance between. Right.
Yeah.
My friend Charlie Cooley toured with Amanda Marshall,
Oh,
and
yes.
he was explaining to me how much more efficient and effective it is in terms of touring in the United States, and how much harder it is to tour in Canada for exactly that reason.
Right. Well, it's crazy. And growing up, you don't necessarily realize that. So, like, I am somebody who, it's like, the kind of locally, the dream shrank as we were trying to pursue it. I grew up playing. I went to music school, but really I wanted.
Where'd you go?
Went to St. FX in Nova Scotia.
Okay.
So I was going to ask you, actually, because doing some research, I saw that you studied with Ian Froman, who I saw play a few times at St. FX.
Yes.
But yeah, anyway, so that is something I want to talk about. But
should I jump in?
Sure.
Okay. So here's the important thing. I'm going to share with you the fact that of all of the instructors that I've ever studied with, all of the exercises I've ever learned, all of the fills, the patterns, the grooves, all of it, I remember the least from Ian Froman. I don't remember learning any patterns. I don't remember do this exercise. I don't remember here's a cool fill. However, I consider him to be one of my most influential instructors of all time, because Ian taught me philosophical lessons about how to approach music. Okay. And again, I have shared these a couple of times, but they bear repeating. I'll give you an example of my tutelage under Master Ian Froman.
Yeah, he's an amazing player.
He's an amazing player, but again, like what I'm about to say might sound like, oh well, duh, whatever. But to the mind of a 20-year-old college student, it was like, so one of my first, I think maybe my first lesson that I ever had with Ian, I'm playing and Ian sets up, I don't know how he sets up now, but at the time he set up, he's like super jazz bow, like super jazzer guy. So he would have never played with his right hand crossed over his left, playing like a typical rock and roll beat like we do. He would have played it open-handed, or he would have whatever. So his snare drum height, the top rim of his snare drum was literally even in height with his hi-hats.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. So first thing I did, I sit down, I'm going to lower the snare drum. I'm going to raise the hi-hats to whatever. And he goes, hey, man. And by the way, I should point out that Ian's studio was always only barely lit. It was only barely lit. And there would have been like tapestries and like things like hanging and like incense and all of it. Right. And he was like, hey, man, what are you doing? And I was like, I don't know, Ian, I was going to raise the thing and just think. And he goes, look, man, he goes, you're going to land at the airport in Denmark 45 minutes before your set. You're going to race to the festival, run up on stage 10 minutes before you have to play. He goes, you're barely going to have time to tune the drums, much less adjust them to your perfect specs. You have to just be able to sit down and make music. It sounds so simple. But at the time, I was like, huge. Wow. And I've literally carried that with me forever. I've carried it with me forever. If I go to a jam session, I sit down on someone's kit, I don't touch a thing. I just go, all right, here's your challenge. Make music on this.
This
go
is
for
what
it.
it
Do
is
it
today.
You know, and I'll follow that up quickly with my second favorite Ian Froman story. So again, earlier lessons, I'm just getting to know him. I'm just getting to learn like the terrain that I'm dealing with. He says, okay, I want you to trade fours with yourself. And I go, okay, cool. So 4 bars a time. For anyone listening who doesn't know what trading fours means, it just means playing 4 bars a time and then playing 4 bars of solo and back and forth, trading fours. So I'm playing 4 bars a time and I play a solo and I play whatever I rattle around. And then I play 4 bars a time and then I play a solo. And the thing that I tried to do this like single stroke thing between my hand and my foot. And I completely blow it and it sucks and I mess it up. And so I play 4 bars a time again. And then I'm like, damn it, I can do that. and I go for it again, and I nail it the next time. I kill it. It's perfectly even. Bang, bang, boom. And Ian stops me again. He goes, "So, hey, man, what are you doing? Don't practice on the bandstand." And I go,
right.
Don't practice on the bandstand, right? And I go, but Ian, if I was a painter, swear to God, I remember this like it was yesterday, Brian. I go, Ian, if I was a painter and I painted a tree, if the tree wasn't right, I wouldn't just leave it. I would try to fix it. And Ian kind of like stroked his chin a little bit. And he goes, yeah, but you wouldn't paint the same exact tree right beside the one you just fucked up. And I was like, there's my tuition dollars right there. That's why I'm paying tuition to go to this school. That was genius. So that's what I mean. So it's like those kinds of things are more profound than like, oh, here's this hand-foot pattern, you know?
Of course.
So, right? So I've had great instructors, and this is not at all to take away anything from any of the lessons and grooves and patterns and fills and systems I've learned from any of them. It's all great. It's all valuable. But I far more frequently find myself quoting anecdotes that I learned from Ian's lessons that affected me in a profound and philosophical way.
Right. Well, I think that ultimately that's important because it's like all of the flash is, or just, you know, the technique, the ability to execute is amazing if you can do something compelling with it. But otherwise, it's like if you are just like spinning your tires, you know, what's the point?
Yeah, what about you? Like what kind of stuff did you or have you learned, or what did you learn at? Say the name of the school again. I don't know that college.
St. Francis. I've heard them say like Xavier. It's like Xavier, like Professor X from X-Men.
Yes. St. Francis Xavier.
Yeah.
And it's a dedicated music college?
No, it's not. It's a university, and they have a music department. I think it was the first jazz program in Canada.
Okay. The only school that I know there is maybe like there's a school there called Banff, right? Mm-hmm. Where's that?
That's in Alberta.
Okay. And that's like a dedicated music college, right?
No, it's like a multidisciplinary like arts center. So it's like the Banff Center for Creativity.
Why do I primarily know Banff? Like, why do I know it as a music college? Is it known to be like an art-centric undergrad program?
I wouldn't say it's an undergrad. It's I don't know, because I know they do have kind of longer programs, but people will go for like 6 months. But it's the Banff Center for the Arts, maybe Arts and Creativity or something. It's right in the mountains, and people.
Is it a 4-year college? Or
no.
Is it? Oh, okay. So it's more like is it like a trade school-y, more like Musicians Institute or something, where it's like an 18-month curriculum?
No, I don't think. I mean, I know a guy who got he did an audio engineer certification there, but I don't think it's a place people go for training so much as it's like a retreat, kind of like creative, like hunker down workshop. Oh, kind of. There's performance.
Interesting.
Apparently it's really amazing, but I have not been personally, but I know, like Jerry Grinelli, who's a drummer out here, he will go and teach there for like a couple of months.
Okay.
And there's a lot of that. There's different, you can do, this particular workshop runs from January to March, and it's with this faculty. And so they bring people from all over the world. But my understanding, it's more that kind of thing. You go for a workshop for it could be 2 weeks. Yeah. But so there's a number of programs across the country. There's like McGill in Montreal, Humber in Toronto. I guess U of T also. Calgary, I'm not sure. Maybe there's University of Alberta or something.
Okay.
There was, where we went, there's Grant MacEwan College in Edmonton that did a 2-year program, and a bunch of those students transferred over to St. FX, where I went after the 2 years. So we had an influx of jazz musicians from Alberta.
Oh, you're saying St. FX.
FX, yeah.
Man, I was like, my ears, like, what do you say? And then just now when you said Saint FX, I was like, oh, okay, Saint FX, Saint Francis Xavier.
Yeah.
Light bulb goes on finally.
Oh, and it's an entire thing. Like they've got, so there's a ring. I lost mine, but there's a grad ring. You get the grad ring, and it's got like the letter X on it. They claim it's the third most recognizable ring in the world. Recognizable, which is like, what's your measure for that? Are you talking psychology and patterns?
How
or
do you
like
quantify that? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They sit behind the Pope's ring and the Super Bowl ring.
I feel like an NBA championship ring.
Is maybe
ring. I mean, maybe, but I don't know.
Yeah, but could you pick it out of a lineup? Could you know, like, if somebody offered you an NBA championship ring, would you know if it was real?
I think the fact that I wouldn't means I wouldn't care.
Yeah, I wouldn't recognize the Super Bowl ring or the Pope's ring.
I wouldn't recognize the Pope's ring because I don't think I've ever seen it.
Yeah,
but I think that if I saw an NBA championship ring, I mean, assuming that it was like at least a close facsimile as opposed to something that came out of like a Cracker Jack box.
Yeah,
it would have like diamonds and crazy emeralds and jewels
like
and
pretty
things.
Big and pretty official looking.
Giant. I would probably wear like a Super Bowl championship ring or an NBA championship ring as like a bracelet. It would probably be that big.
They look, pictures that I've seen of like they look pretty intense.
They look huge on NBA players who are huge.
Who are like exactly like huge giant human beings.
Yes.
And like I wouldn't recognize an NHL ring. Hockey is the thing.
Are you allowed to say that? You're Canadian.
Oh, yeah, no.
Are you allowed to say that?
Hockey, I did hockey when I was a kid. It didn't really work. No, I didn't. Well, it was like...
Was it like you got hit that first time and you're just like, yo, where's my drumsticks?
Well, sort of. Like, so I have ADHD, but I have like not really hyperactive, just inattentive. But I only found that out like a year or two ago. But when I was a kid, playing hockey, it's like I didn't totally understand the rules. I didn't really care if.
Hold on, Ryan. Kid, what age?
Like 7 to
7
to like 10 or 11. Yeah.
Okay.
I was no older than 12 when I stopped playing. I think I was probably 11. I got in trouble at school. I wasn't doing my homework, and my teacher sent home a note. Maybe my principal sent home a note because it happened a few times, and my parents said, if this doesn't improve, no more hockey. And I said, okay. And then like,
promise? You promise?
That was the end of that.
Well, yeah, my thing was like, I found music at a very young age.
Yeah. How old were you?
I started building drum sets out of junk around my house. Not junk, but like the old ice cream carton and some boxes and things like that. I mean, I was 4 years old when I started doing that. And then I got my first quote unquote real drum set when I was, I think, like 5. It was like a Muppets drum set from Sears. And I destroyed it, like played it into dust. Not destroyed it, like tore it apart, like destructively. Just like Animal would have been very proud. Like I played it until it just disintegrated. And then I got a real
fan. What did you have for drumsticks? Did they come with it or did you have real sticks?
Would have come with. Yeah, it would have come with. It would have been like the whole like one piece thing in the box, Yeah. And so that was 5, and then 6 I got a real drum set.
Yeah.
But 8 was the first time I actually took lessons on anything, and it was actually piano. So I took lessons on piano when I was 8, and then around 13, 14, I said to my mom, I hate piano. I want to quit piano. Can I please have drum lessons instead of piano lessons? And my mom, in one of the more genius moves that she's ever made, said, I will get you drum lessons, or we will find you a drum instructor on the condition that you continue to play piano and continue to take piano lessons. So that was, at the time it was like, oh, Mom. But looking back on it, it was actually a really great move.
That's huge.
Because because my piano experience informed, everything that I did musically from that point forth. So yeah, I was around, I guess. I mean, I guess I could honestly say I started playing drums when I was about 5, 6.
Right.
You know, and I played piano from 8 until graduating high school at 18 or so.
Wow.
Yeah.
You stuck with it. So did you do Royal Conservatory? Like, did you get to a grade?
I went to, at one point we lived in Baltimore. We lived outside of Baltimore, Maryland. And in Baltimore, Maryland is the Peabody Conservatory. And Peabody Conservatory is college level. And the feeder into Peabody Conservatory is Peabody Preparatory. And I didn't attend the prep full time, but I did take classes there. And that was where I had my private lessons. So I studied at Peabody Prep piano, and that was up until graduating high school. And then when I graduated high school, I was connected to a guy named Thomas Hecht, who is a concert piano instructor, concert pianist. And he said to me, now's the time you need to make the determination, is your piano going to become something like serious? In which case the practice level goes up, the intensity level goes up, and we enter competitions and so on. Or is it going to be a hobby? In which case, keep doing what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And I immediately said hobby, because I was playing drums in my band with my friends in high school and playing for my peers and obtaining a certain amount of peer recognition and peer acceptance from that. Whereas concert piano can be a little bit of a lonely game.
Oh, I would think so.
Yes, because I will never forget, playing recitals at Peabody and walking out across the stage to the piano, sitting in the middle of the stage, and there's a room full of, maybe it's 200 people, maybe it's, 500 people, whatever it is in that concert hall. And it's like, it is bone chillingly quiet as you walk across. And all I can hear is my heels and toes of my dress shoes click clacking across the stage and echoing in the as I walk to the piano by myself. It is the most alienating feeling ever for me, because as you can tell, even by this, I like people, I like chatting, I like talking, I like people around. Yeah. That is a very lonely, for me anyway, existence. So yeah, I did not find it warm or inviting or inspiring. And so the second I was given the opportunity to sort of shift gears out of it, I did.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough.
That said, it is a lifestyle for whom, if you are built for, is amazing. There are incredible concert pianists, obviously, and I have the utmost respect for them. I just wasn't cut of that cloth.
Sure, definitely. Now, did you find when performing, like, could you focus in on the music and kind of block out the weirdness of the situation, or would that like infiltrate the performance?
Talking about drums or piano?
Piano in the concert hall.
No, piano. I never was able to be in my own skin doing it. The only way that I ever had successful performances was if I was somehow able to forget where I was and what I was doing. Yeah. And then just sort of go on autopilot and then just like hope for the best. Yeah. I'll never forget one time I did a recital. And this is like a drumming situation. And here I am talking about concert piano, but I did a recital. I walked, up the stairs of the stage. I walked to the piano. I sat down. And then as I'm sitting there at the piano, I suddenly realize it's all from memory, but I suddenly realize that like I'm in the middle of the third line of the first page. Like at no point did I say, now I'm going to begin. It suddenly just began and I was just playing. Mm-hmm. I was like, whoa, wait, where am I? What's going on? and it happened to be this piano. This is the most obscure, dumb story, but it happened to be this piano where the, I don't even know what to call it, but like the portion of wood in front of the keys was mirrored it was mirrored. It was shined to a mirror finish. And so I'm playing and I'm watching my hands as I play, but at the same time, I'm watching this mirror image of my hands doing everything backwards, it felt. And then I got sucked. This is why I'm not good at concert piano. This is why that was not my world. I got sucked into watching this backwards inverted image of my hands doing the thing. And I couldn't get out of it. And I literally, Ryan, crashed and burned in the middle of my piece. I crashed and burned. I completely went off the rails. I made mistakes, and I had to actually literally stop playing. And I went, oh boy, wait, hold on. And I had to take a breath. And I tried again, and the same thing happened again. And I literally, in the middle of my piece, had to get up, bow, because that's the protocol, and walk off the stage. In the middle of my piece, I went down in flames. I had to get up. Think about that for a moment. I completely fumbled the ball, then had to get up, bow, and then the audience goes.
In the formal situation,
The audience kind of they have to pull up.
They have to do something. Applaud. How old were you?
It's etiquette. That's a good question. Hold on, let's see. That would have been nearing the end. So, 16. 15,
sure, but still, they're not good. Who's in the audience? Like, they're not going to boo a kid, you know? They're not going to be. It's like,
well, in that environment,
really?
I mean, they're not going to boo a kid. No, they're not going to boo a kid. But in their environment, it's definitely like, you're not cut out for this.
Yeah.
You know, it's definitely that. So, but again, having said all of that, I mean, even if for nothing more than like fun podcast material 30 years
amazing.
later,
it's an amazing story.
It was an incredible experience.
You wish that you would, like, you know, as you know, as I'm hearing it, you just wish that, like, the way that this is supposed to end, because you must be thinking in the spot, is like, and my hands they just knew what to do. All I had to do was watch them, and it was amazing. It's like, but that's the question. Or like, does it do that until it's like the moment you become aware, right? As soon as you're playing, everything's great. When I play,
and then you die.
As soon as you start thinking. Yeah.
So with drumming, I never have that happen, because with drumming, I feel very comfortable being, quote unquote, in the moment. And I feel very comfortable allowing the music to dictate what I'm going to play or what I'm going to do. And I feel very at home and in my happy place when I'm doing that. Whereas playing concert piano for me was an exercise in rote memorization and praying that my mind wouldn't get in the way. Like, turn off your brain and just hope, just get out of the way and hope for the best. Hope for that your hands just know what to do automatically.
So when you say rote memorization, you do mean it's like completely muscle memory.
If I start thinking about it, like you said, if I start thinking about it, like if I start thinking about the notes I play. Now, drumming is similar in the sense that I don't make it a habit to like be deep in thought when I'm playing. I'm not really thinking about what I'm playing. I'm not thinking like, oh, here comes the chorus. I'm going to play this one fill that goes right, left, right, foot, right, left, right, foot. But it is a much more free-flowing thing, because I'm allowed to do that when I'm playing drums, because the reality is, unless I'm playing a piece that, or unless I'm playing a tune drumming wise that is rife with signature licks that I've got to nail, so people don't go like, oh, this guy's a fraud. Unless I'm doing that, at the end of every 8 bars, I just get to play a fill.
Yeah.
And if I go got to goot doot to crash, or if I go dacka doot dicka doot crash, or if I go blackum bligga doot crash, all those are acceptable answers. In concert piano, you can't just look at the page and be like, you know what? I hear a D flat here.
No,
you know what I'm saying?
It goes one way.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like in jazz you can. In jazz, you can be like, oh, I'm going to reharm this way. But in classical piano, you can't. So it's much harder to just like let go and let your spirit lead the way. Yep. It's like you can't really do that in concert piano.
Well,
you know?
no, it seems like it's about like maybe you practice the piece until it's fully internalized, and that's really what that discipline is about. And it's like it's about expression,
Yes.
rather than But if you are not at the level where it's like completely second nature and you can kind of just watch your hands do it, like, no, I think the thing that
There's
it
a
made me
high-
think of.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say there's a high potential for going off the rails.
Yeah.
I think that the best concert pianists can completely think about what they're doing.
Mhm.
I believe that like a top level concert pianist can absolutely look at their hands and look at the notes and know where their hands are going and what notes they're supposed to play and what this chord structure is, and they know it that well.
Yeah.
Whereas that's what I mean when I say I had basically like memorized it. Like I was just trying to like muscle memory my way through it so that I would just like, pray that my hands would just know what to do.
Mm-hmm. That's what,
And
like,
sometimes they did, and sometimes they didn't.
yeah. What it makes me think of is I play guitar and sing a bit, but like I will go out and play cover gigs, which I did a bunch of this past summer, especially because everything was canceled as far as live performance. But there were like local things that would pop up. We had low COVID cases here. We had kind of like quarantine restrictions at the border of the province, and so anyway, things were okay. We had the Atlantic bubble, as they called it in our region. We had like, it was kind of like the European Union or something. I guess it was like free travel between provinces, but to get in, there's rules. But anyway, it's like if I am playing a song, and maybe it's a song that like I've learned, I'm lucky in that once I learn a song, it's just in there. But if it's like something I haven't played in a while and I got to sing a line and my hand is cycling through a few different chords, if I don't think about what those chords are, what their relationship is to each other, and which one I'm hitting next for which reason, if I just let my hand do it, I'll play it right. But the minute that I start to think like, is that a C or an F?
Yeah.
Train wreck.
Yeah. Well, that was my relationship to concert piano.
Yeah.
That was my relationship. And I remember I was studying with a young woman she was a young woman then, she's a little bit older now, but Catherine Jacobson was her name. And she was the wife of Leon Fleischer, who was a legendary concert pianist. But I was studying with Catherine Jacobson. And I remember that she had a stack of music on the piano one day. I went in for my lesson with her at Peabody, and there was a stack of like 12 books of, concert piano material. And I was like, what's that? And she was like, oh, I have to learn it. I'm doing a concert at the Meyerhoff Symphony, next month. And I was like, oh, okay. And she was like, yeah, I haven't quite started working on it yet, but I will. And it dawned on me, like, really? You're going to start working on that gigantic stack of literature, and in a month, you're going to be ready to play it in front of people? Because I was at the point where tackling something of that level would have taken me 4 to 5 months to get ready for, So that was one of those things. Again, that was one of those things where I was like, I don't think this is the life that I'm cut out for.
No. Well, I think
where's my drumsticks?
Too. Yeah, ultimately, I think So when did you really become? You were serious about the drums from the get-go. So have you destroyed your childhood drum kit?
I was very serious about music from the get-go.
Yeah.
And in fact, initially piano, because initially I enjoyed piano. I started playing piano at age 7 or 8 in the second grade, and I enjoyed it very much. So I feel like I knew how much I enjoyed music, even through piano, but primarily through drums from a very early age. It was in high school when my drum instructor, who is a cat named Grant Menifee, who is an amazing drum instructor just outside of Baltimore, an area called Catonsville, Maryland. And Grant said to me, I don't tell all my students this, but I will tell you this. If you give this everything you've got and you practice your ass off, there is a chance you might actually be able to do this for a living. And that was enough.
Yeah.
That was enough. That was enough. You know, I was like, really? Okay, done. You set down the ground rules, and I'm going to do it. Here we go. And again, you know, drumming for me, I've just, you know, you were speaking of being hyperactive earlier. And I think that if I were born today in this age of medication and over medication of kids, particularly, I probably would have been prescribed something, you know. Back then it was like, oh, Nathaniel, he's got a mind of his own.
Got a lot of energy.
Oh, he's got a lot of energy. Exactly. You know, you've been there, done that. Yeah, he's got a lot of energy. And so fortunately for me, that found its way to the drum set. And it was just a passion. And I've said this again, you know, a couple of times as well, previously, seeing Animal on the Muppet Show be completely insane, but play the drums was like, I can apply my insanity to playing drums. I can do that too, you know? So, and I played my talent show with my garage band, Akamili. And we finished whatever song we finished, or we finished whatever set. We only played, you know, 3 songs or whatever. And Dave Siddick, the leader of the band, looked at me after the thing, and he said, man, I couldn't even look back at you because you were glowing so brightly. It would have blinded me. You know, I just had that much fun and that much energy.
Well, this is
playing
something
drums.
This is something I was going to comment, because it's like watching videos of you playing, it is palpable, like just the joy that you feel about playing.
Dude, I hit stuff, man. It's like, come on. I'm literally still, even though they're like, you know, maple gum, you know, ply compound, or, you know, shell or that shell, or these heads or that head, or this rim or that. They're still pots and pans. I'm still 4 years old, and I'm still banging on them with salad spoons. That's it. One more time. They're still pots and pans.
I'm just letting it soak in. It's beautiful.
4 or 5 years old, and I'm banging on them with salad spoons. And that's it. And that's literally, that's it, man. I'm a caveman, and I love it. And, you know, I just never bothered growing up.
Yeah, it is interesting. There's something so primal about it. That's what you started with, pots and pans and salad spoons.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, my kids do that. My 3-year-old does that. He pulls pots and pans out and bangs on them with salad spoons.
Yeah.
And he also has, like, you know, like the kid behind me to sit and bang on.
Yeah. If he wants to play.
Yeah, I mean, but he can't. But, you know, he's 3. He can't even reach the pedals. Like, if I put the drum throne low enough for him to reach the pedals, he can't get the sticks.
He can't reach the snare.
Yeah, he can't reach the snare. But at the same time, I just mean, you know, it's like I just never bothered growing up, and it is not. I don't mean to oversimplify it or make it sound like I've got some sort of Peter Pan syndrome or anything like that. It's just that I've always had that same level of joy and, like, sort of I don't know, unbridled, just like wailing on stuff, you know, internalized, and that had always fueled my playing, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. And then in high school, when Grant said to me, you might actually be able to keep doing this, then, like I said, that was all it took. I was like, okay, this is amazing, you know? So again, it's not choosing. I think it was Eric Clapton who said, we don't choose to be we don't choose music chooses us. Mm-hmm. And so I very much feel that way. I very much feel that way. Right. I very much feel like music was like, yo, you. Yeah. And then I was like, all right, that's it. I don't know. There's nothing else.
Well, it's the funny thing. Like, I remember hearing Jim Gaffigan on Mark Maron's podcast, and he's talking about how pursuing stand-up comedy, you know, at a certain point he started telling people, you know, that was his dream.
And he's like, you know, I want to be a stand-up comic, but, you know, everyone wants to be a stand-up comic. And everybody else is like, no.
No, we don't.
No.
No, we don't. Exactly.
only you want to do that. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I can very much relate. Okay. So let's like hit a few biographical facts. So where did you grow up, sir?
Up and down the East Coast. Do you want to know? Okay, so where did I grow up? I was born in Nashville, Tennessee.
Uh-huh.
All right. I grew up part of my life after that in Kent, Ohio.
Oh, wow.
And then to Columbia, Maryland. And then from Columbia, Maryland, very briefly, Virginia. And then off to Berklee College of Music in Boston, where I lived until I moved out here in 98.
Right. I feel like people in the U.S., I mean, people in Canada do too, but it seems more common in the U.S. to like move around and like the whole country is at your disposal, whereas here it's more like, I don't know, you like the regions are so far apart that it's.
I hear what you're saying. Although I think that the amount that I moved around is a little bit outside the norm because my father worked at colleges and universities. Right. And so he was initially a professor, but then started working his way up the sort of administration. There we go. Yeah. Administration ladder. So if you're a vice president, let's say, or if you're an assistant vice president at a college, for you to make a move, it's to be a vice president at another college.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so as he worked his way up that chain, he sort of bounced around different places.
Yeah.
Or not bounced around, but it sort of took him from one place to another. Mm-hmm. And so that was, it's almost akin to a military sort of family where you move from base to base. And that's primarily the source of my moving. So that's kind of where that's at.
Is that something, you know, people say, you know, you learn kind of resilience or whatever. I'm somebody who, like, my parents still live in the house that I grew up in, and for better or for worse, whatever, I grew up in a rural area and stayed there my entire life. And I never even had the experience of moving to a different house. Now, as an adult, I've moved around plenty, but do you find growing up, like, do you have any kind of philosophical, like, maybe more adaptable, or maybe that's why I started touring, or do you think, you know, it just is what it is?
Sure. Well, you know, first and foremost, I actually think, and I don't have this, like, the stats in front of me, but I actually think that many Americans are born, grow up, live their entire lives, and die within a 50 square mile radius.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that the majority have, you know, traversed thousands of miles between various domiciles over the course of their existences. So in that regard, I think that the average is probably on par with what you may have experienced growing up. Now, that said, I don't know how much that drove my, you know, wanderlust to travel and tour. However, it definitely did. It definitely did create a necessity for my ability to make new friends.
Yeah,
because I would be in different places, you know. So, and then, you know, this is, I mean, I don't know. I don't mean to get too far into the weeds here on this. I don't know if that was already a part of my personality, or if that's something that did develop.
You developed
because I had to always be making a new friend set. So my daughter, my 8-year-old daughter, well, my 8-year-old daughter and my 5-year-old daughter are both friends with a neighbor's daughter who is also, what's Olivia? Olivia, I think, is 8, maybe, or 9.
Yeah.
And it's funny to me because I think to myself, if we live in this house for an extended amount of time and our neighbors don't move, my daughters could have a friend that they've known since they were 5 years old.
Yeah.
I also know people who have friends that they met in the first grade. I have no idea where anyone I went to first grade with is. No idea.
Right.
You would have to go all the way up to. You would have to go up to fourth grade, where I have one or two people that I still know where they are.
Sure.
And then past that, it's like high school.
Yeah, well, I would say like I have a handful of friends that I know from, that age, but I would say more likely they are relatives. But it also would be like anyone that I still talk to that I would have met that young is because I hung out with them in high school.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as a result of. So yeah, definitely. Like if
I don't know anyone from the third grade.
you don't form lasting relationships at that age.
Well, or at least I didn't, because I was moving. Like I went to preschool in a different place than I went to first through third grade.
Yeah.
Then I went to a place that I went to fourth through sixth grade. Then I was finally 7 through the end of high school. I was in the same place. But every previous little segment of grades, I was in different places.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Zero to preschool, Nashville. First grade to third grade, Stonewall, Tennessee. Fourth grade to sixth grade, Kent, Ohio. And then seventh grade through high school was Columbia, Maryland.
Right. So like completely different places, like
all over the place.
And like pre-internet, people aren't.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah, people aren't connected in the same way they are now.
Exactly.
Okay. So how do you end up going to Berklee?
I went to Berklee primarily because my drum instructor, Grant Menifee, went to Berklee.
Okay.
And when he said, you know what, you might actually be able to do this, I went, okay, what do I do to give myself the best opportunity for success?
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, the idea was that I would go to University of Maryland. I went to the University of Maryland as an engineering major with the mindset of getting a degree in engineering because that's marketable, quote unquote. Yep. And then I'll be a musician on the side, but I can always fall back on this engineering degree. And stepping into engineering, I realized you really have to have a much, much higher level of dedication to doing this than I did.
It's so demanding.
It's not a discipline that you do half-heartedly.
Yeah.
So shortly into my collegiate career as an engineering major, I realized I am making a mistake in my collegiate career being an engineering major. And so I changed my major after a year, and with the help of Grant Menifee, transferred to Berklee College of Music. So that's how I wound up there.
Well, that's so. I mean, that's you went all in. You went all in on that decision.
I did, and and there are lots of stories along the way that I can share with you. But the two of the biggest decisions that I ever made that have afforded me the greatest opportunity for success as a musician they're tied, top two, neck and neck. Number one, going to Berklee College of Music. Number two, moving to LA.
Amazing.
On that note, pause because I have to pee.
Yep. Okay, perfect.
I'll be right back.
Okay. Resume recording here. Okay, yes.
I would have to say that two of the most important decisions that had the greatest and most profound influence on my career going forward were A, going to Berklee College of Music, and then B, moving to Los Angeles. They're tied for number one in terms of their level of importance. I'm not a diehard jazzer, and I had enough of East Coast winters. So
that New York is out. Yeah.
Gone. Time, I didn't want to play majority country music.
Nashville's out.
Nashville, gone. At the time, I didn't believe in the long-term viability of Atlanta as a musical hotbed. Yep. So Atlanta, gone. And to add to that, I felt like if I'm going to go somewhere and suffer for my art,
Yeah.
it might as well be where it's 85 degrees and sunny every day.
Yeah.
And hence I landed in Los Angeles.
If life is too hard, you can go to the beach.
And it's free.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's free
And
and,
it's just
all
amazing.
of it. Yes. Yes. And, that was it. I mean, that's it in a nutshell. My mom said to me, what did she say to me? How long are you going to struggle in LA before you give up and, move back home? And I said, as long as it takes.
Yep. Good answer. That's the right answer.
Also, I mean,
like, you
if
give
I move
up
back home
to do what?
Right, exactly. And you just jumped right in front of me right there. Because like, yeah, if I move back home, I was literally, I mean, like, to me, like, I'm not alone in this by any stretch, and nor do I advise it. I'm just sharing my experience. I was a no plan B kind of guy.
Yeah.
And I'm still no plan B. So if like the bottom falls out of everything tomorrow, I'm still going to have to try to figure out a way to be a musician. And I have a great buddy of mine, Tom Witt. I've known him for, oh my gosh, I've known Tom for 30 years at this point. I met him at Berklee. He's a bass player. And Tom once said to me, Nate, if you're ever having like, second thoughts, like maybe you've made the wrong life decisions about being a musician, or maybe you should have chosen another path, you can always take comfort in knowing that pretty much there's no turning back at this point. Like you have no other marketable skills.
No, there's no. You're not going to be able to train for it.
Right? Your only option is figuring out how to make a living as a musician.
Yeah.
And so that so as funny as that is, and as sort of dark as that is, it is the reality. It's like I left being a mechanical engineering major. I don't have a degree that I can show up and flash in front of people and immediately get a job. So It's this, or it could be Home Depot, or it could be,
or like start at the beginning. Yeah.
And I don't want to be mean. I'm not trying to I'm not poo-pooing Home Depot. I'm just saying that it's not going to be this or neurosurgeon. That's what I'm getting at here.
No, definitely. Well, the joke I was going to make is like, you could go and sell popcorn at the movie theater. There might be 10 years left in that.
Yes, I think I have the skills capable of doing that. I think so. Well, I worked at CVS in high school as a clerk and like shelf stocker.
Yeah.
So I think I have those skills, so I could do that.
Yeah.
Or hopefully this music thing continues to work out.
Well, it's interesting that you say, like, if the bottom falls out, in working in an industry where the bottom has already fallen out for the recording industry, the bottom has fallen out for touring people this year.
Good point.
But I consider myself lucky. Like, I wasn't really that financially impacted by COVID. I know that a lot of people were. My life has been pretty fine,
You've weathered the storm.
Yeah.
Or you're weathering the storm.
I'm weathering the storm. But there was another thing that I was going.
Just to jump in, by the way.
Yeah.
I up till March 2020, I would very much bristle at this idea when people would say, "Oh, you're so lucky you could be a musician. You're so lucky." I would bristle because I would think to myself, it's actually not luck that I've practiced.
You worked really hard.
8 hours a day, every day of my life since I was 8. Like, that's not really luck. That said, in this current climate, when, as we spoke about, the bottom has so much fallen out of things, and I am so blessed and fortunate to actually have a gig right now, I actually do consider myself very lucky. I actually do. I don't mind saying that I'm lucky to be able to work through this, I don't know, I mean, sort of generational period in our existence on this rock.
Yeah.
I was walking into the Voice several weeks back, because we're on a little bit of a break now. We're back at the beginning of January working again, or sorry, the middle of January. But I was walking in, and we get tested frequently. Like, we get tested frequently. We get our temperature taken multiple times a day and all of it. And I was videoing myself, and one of my coworkers was like, "Why are you videoing yourself getting tested? Like, that's like so boring." And I was like, "Are you kidding me? Boring? Like, this is history. Like, the fact that the production of this show is able to find a way to go on and create content and be a meaningful contributor to what people out there are able to consume in terms of their television program. It's not boring. It's historical. So A, that's historical. B, I consider myself lucky to be able to be a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. Yeah, I agree. I consider myself absolutely lucky. And I also agree. It's like, because the people who think, I think that, luck to some degree plays part in all of our fortunes. I'm, lucky in a lot of ways. But also, if that's what you're relying on, like, it's not enough. No. But so that's a question I was going to ask too. So I don't have cable, and I usually work till 9 p.m. So I haven't seen this season of The Voice. We just got cable. When they moved the internet box, they also installed cable. I haven't had cable TV in 5 years or something.
Are you aware of the invention of the wheel? Is it slowly making its way through your parts?
Yes, it's slowly making its way to Canada. The wheel. Yeah.
Really? You always got cable?
No, I just didn't. I just didn't have. You got Netflix, you watch YouTube. I'm not a big TV guy to begin with.
Good for you. Better that way. I wish I wasn't.
Yeah, we just didn't have it. We moved into this house last year and have just been doing, video on demand. But we recently, there was an offer from the internet company, which is also the cable company, and it was less than we were paying just for internet. So we also have a landline, but we don't have a phone to plug it in.
But you know what though? I would say too though, Ryan. I mean, I'm kidding you, but at the same time, I kid myself by virtue of the fact that I realize that ultimately cable is kind of old news. Like, in other words, these days, young folk like yourself are like, okay, all I need is Hulu and Netflix and this one cable channel that I watch.
Yep.
Whereas like a dinosaur like me is paying monthly for like 787,000 channels, and I watched 4 of them.
Yeah, of course. But you need the packet. You need the platform in order to get those 4.
Right.
Well, this is what I thought.
You were asking a question. I'm sorry. I interrupted you.
I grew up without cable, so it's like it's never been something that I needed, and so now it is totally a novelty for me. But I don't have the habit. But I was going to ask, so how you guys are navigating everything with the show? So like no audience.
No audience. We have a multiple video screen where we have a virtual audience of all people who have logged on and are watching the show online. And we are limited in the number of people that we are allowed to have in the soundstage. Like, and I mean working people. I don't mean people audience. I mean coaches. That's 4. Band members. That's, this many. And working personnel.
Yep.
And that is how we're making our way through it, And I think that the product that airs is an amazing product. It's much like when we as consumers, I'm a big NBA fan. Yep. So it's much like when I watch an NBA game, ultimately what I'm watching, they're piping in audience noise. When someone makes a shot, someone pushes the fader up for a second, brings it back down.
Right.
You know what I mean? Occasionally you hear like a
yeah.
You get that. But the reality is those dudes are playing 5-on-5 in a relatively empty gymnasium that would seat 25,000 people. So it's very much like that. So I think that the product and the process by which we are creating it is a great thing. And I'm proud to be a part of it and amazed to be a part of it. at the same time, I'm fighting the, like, this is odd. There's no people in here. So for me as a drummer, and feeling as though my main objective is to create the energy, like the inertia that pushes it forward. Mm-hmm. And that's an inertia that feeds on a crowd, right? You do something, they go like to this level. Absolutely. And it's like, yeah, then you go to that level, then they go to the next level, you go to that.
Energy in the room.
Cyclical. Yep. Exactly. Yep. So that's the challenge, which is, the challenge is making it not be a studio recording session.
Yeah.
Making it not be, let me play what is safe to get this take. And making it more like, if this were live, I'd be going for it. Because like them people over there are looking at me and I'm looking at them and I'm like, yeah, all right, let's go for it. I'll try this thing. And maybe it works and maybe it doesn't, whatever. But like, that's a certain level of energy that now we all have to create ourselves. And I would like to think we're doing a pretty good job of it. Mm-hmm. And I would like to think that it's coming across that way with that same level of energy, even though, yes, when we finish, the applause that we hear is the four coaches going.
Right. And you just have to trust that it's good enough. Yeah, it's like the lack of the immediacy, the immediate feedback. That was a question that I have. Like, you seem to have a lot of freedom to kind of, it's like you're playing songs that are known, but there's seems to be a lot of leeway to make it your own. Is that built into how it operates, or is that just kind of?
Some of that is born out of how fast we have to learn and then play these pieces. So as I alluded to before, if you're playing a piece where there's like a lot of signature stuff, like if Rosanna comes up and you don't know the groove to Rosanna, then you're screwed.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
If you don't know how to go.
Groove. Yeah. Okay. But what about the big fill?
If you don't know how to go back at the boost, and you don't know where all those grace notes fall and where all the accents are and the kick drum pattern,
even the kick pattern,
then you're getting hate mail. Then you're gonna get hate. Like, what the hell are you doing, you numbskull?
Butchered Rosanna on primetime
TV. Exactly. But short of that, for the most part, if you're playing boom bap, boom boom bap, or something thereabouts, and you know where to play a fill, typically you're okay with that as a skeletal blueprint. So in terms of leeway, that is a connective tissue, let's say, between myself and my bass player, Sasha, because he's got to deal with whatever I play. And then my musical boss, which is my musical director, Paul Merkovich. And the three of us have played together for, I feel like it's been 15 years or more. 2005. Yeah, it has been actually over 15 years, 2005. So there's a certain trust that goes on. And with Paul, my boss, Paul Merkovich, my MD, there's an extent to where Paul, again, getting back to that word balance that we so often talked about earlier, or that we so much talked about earlier, Paul has this balance of like, okay, I want Nate to feel free to be Nate to the extent that he's playing a little wacky thing here or there that drives the band or that pushes the band to a certain energy level that he wants to obtain. But every now and then, maybe I go a little overboard. And maybe he says, I don't really love that, Phil. So, but there is definitely an ongoing communication between the three of us, Sasha, Paul, and myself. And that is what creates the inertia. And that is the balance of those things is what drives the band. Do I have slightly more leeway than I might have if I was playing with the actual artist and they wanted everything note for note spot on like the record? Yeah, I do. But can I just completely go ape and start like superimposing, like
like
5/7
different time signatures.
polyrhythms and stuff. Like, no, like, right? You know what I mean? Can I go complete? Can I treat it like the Snarky Puppy gig and just start playing all the cool stuff?
Right,
that
sure,
Larnell
yeah.
plays on God Bless the Broken Road.
Your
No.
metric modulations.
Which, by the way, I mentioned Larnell because he's like kind of at the front of my brain right now.
Yeah.
I love his playing so much. Are you hip to Larnell? He's a fellow Canadian.
I didn't. Oh, is he from Toronto?
I think so. He's from T-Dot.
Yes. So
I think he's T-Dot. Yeah.
My former bandmate was a big Snarky Puppy guy. I would say I'm just not that familiar.
Go when we're done with this.
Yep.
Do yourself a favor. I mean, I know it's late. Oh my God, it's like super late there now.
Oh,
Good
I'm
for
on a
you
roll,
for
dude.
hanging in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes start yourself a little rabbit hole of Snarky Puppy on YouTube.
Okay.
And particularly Larnell, because not only I've never met Larnell, I've never talked to him, but like he's a beautiful player. He has
I watched a video of him the other day. Yeah.
he has an inordinate amount of facility, but it's married to an overriding sense of musicality.
Mm-hmm.
Really. And so like there's like just like his playing has this really beautiful flow. It's very I mean, I'm getting sort of like flowery right now.
Right.
But it really
like
is.
everything grooves. It's like it's very it seems like he can play anything, none of it's out of place. He's like, yeah.
The dude played a drum solo on like the Zildjian Live thing that I attended. And as part of the drum solo, he played the wing nuts of the stand holding the cymbals. Like, what?
Amazing. Yeah.
Really? That's what's happening right now. Yeah. And so, yeah, no, he has no limitations. And but it's like he has no limitations facility wise. But like I said, it's all guided by this just such a musical flow. I mean, the guy's amazing. I love him.
Yeah. I would say I would say in my limited understanding, he's definitely amazing.
That said, if I tried to play God Bless the Broken Road with fills that were like off of the wing nuts of the cymbals, probably not on my show. Probably can't get away with that.
It wouldn't carry. You wouldn't be able to hear it.
It'd be like, you're not at the baked potato. What are you doing?
Yeah, right. The baked potato. I've only recently learned about the baked potato.
Legendary establishment.
Small legendary jazz club, huh?
Small legendary jazz club.
Yeah.
Yep. LA's answer to the Blue Note.
Really, I haven't been to the Blue Note. I've been to the Village Vanguard.
Same
it's
thing.
Tiny. Yeah.
It's tiny and it's cramped and you're gonna hear the best music the city has to offer.
Oh, it was great.
Incredible.
I went when I was in New York just on a random weekend. I saw the Heath brothers before Jimmy, I think, died, the sax player, maybe in the last year or two. Anyway, it was him and the drummer, Albert.
Is it Tooney?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was awesome. He was so good.
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really cool. And it was just like they happened to be playing when we happened to be there. That's who I saw there. But yeah, it was really cool. Okay, I feel like this is gonna help me.
I know, we're all over the map, dude. We're all
here's
over
what
the
I
map.
was gonna say. No, this is what I was gonna say though.
By the way, whenever this comes out,
yeah,
are you going to point out like, oh, Nate and I had gone through an hour of technical difficulties before we actually got
absolutely.
to doing this?
Yeah, that is not escaping the official release.
Excellent.
I was gonna say your own playing is like, it strikes me as like a combination of like big movements, but also like super control at the same time. And you're not like destroying your hands, presumably.
Okay.
How does that come
Ryan?
about? No, it just seems like it looks like you're hitting really hard, and it looks like you're like really kind of like big move, but also like when it counts, it's like very like everything's exactly where it needs to be, you know?
Well, in terms of hitting hard, I do agree. Like sometimes I do see videos of myself and I'm like, wow, the sticks are coming from behind my head.
Yeah.
Like, the sticks are like behind my shoulders when I make that stroke. But the truth is, it's all very relaxed because I've seen drummers who, this is going to sound weird to say, but I've seen drummers who look like they're hitting harder than I hit, or they look like they're hitting harder than they are. Like they look like they're working so hard for the stroke and they're punishing the drums so hard. And then you hear them and they're actually really, really quiet. And it's like, how's that happening? What's going on right now? And I never really learned like molar technique. That was never a thing. I never spent any time studying it. However, I did once say to my drum instructor, Grant Menifee, who I come back to a lot, Ian Froman and Grant Menifee, they are the two biggies. Oh, and John Ramsey, who taught me like anything I know about jazz was John Ramsey at my Berklee experience.
He was a Berklee guy, yeah.
Yes. But Grant Menifee, I said, you know, why are they so loud? And he said, oh, well, right at the end of my stroke, I'm snapping my wrist and I'm grabbing with my fingers. Pow.
Yep.
And that's where my power is coming from. And I was like, oh, okay. And so that's kind of what I do. So as I'm making a stroke, the stroke is involving the entire arm, like much like a molar thing where it's starting with my shoulder and I'm pulling up the wrist and then I come down. And at the end of that stroke, I'm snapping the wrist. And you can tell your listeners that we're on video. So I'm making this motion video wise for you, but they're not going to be able to see
and I'm trying to rip it off.
Sure.
Yeah.
But that's what it is. So it's like the whole motion is a full arm thing where it's all of this, but like it's that whip, pow. So I'm not just trying to go like from here with a stick. I'm not just going like from here with a stick and here's the drum and I'm like, boom, like how hard? Yeah. Like it's not that. It's this. And I saw a, I think it was Steve Gadd, and he talked about when he was in drum corps and they did a thing. I think it was called, I'm so sorry in advance if I'm wrong about this, but I think he said it was called Crazy Arms, but it was that vibe. It was that vibe of the stroke is coming here. So this motion that you're watching me make right now, that your listeners aren't seeing me make, I'm moving my like, shoulders and elbows and arms. I'm very much a wave.
It's not octopus-like.
Okay, octopus-like. But the idea is that even as you get faster, even when you get faster, that motion gets smaller.
It's a wavy, still, like very
it's still there, though.
Fluid. Yeah.
You know, and it's funny, I did a drum clinic once and a kid asked me, how did you develop your molar technique? And I said, what's molar technique? And they said, oh, well, that whipping thing that you're doing. And I said, oh, that's in part because my Rushmore of drummers includes Omar Hakim. And when Omar Hakim plays, when he hits a cymbal, it's like you're doing the wave, like you're breakdancing. You're doing, or not the wave. I guess it is the wave. And I wanted to imitate what he looked like. So that's where that comes from. So, you know, circling all the way back to your point, I don't feel like I'm hitting hard. I really don't, because I feel like whatever power is coming off the kit is being generated less by pure power, like strength wise, and more by economy of motion, if you will, like the whip and how that creates a certain amount of power. You know what I'm saying? When you snap someone with a towel.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? When you snap someone with a towel, the hurt isn't because you're lashing them so hard with the towel. The hurt is because you're timing the whip action of the towel.
And it's all concentrated in the tip.
That bottom, exactly. Yeah. That's what she said. That bottom, 6 inches of that towel whipping accelerates to a much higher velocity then you could actually whip a towel at a person.
Yeah.
So it's much the same way with the stroke that I'm basically employing. So I kind of over-explained it and even worked in an awkward "that's what she said" reference.
I've actually one of the things that doing this has will have results is I often will deliberately like not be like yeah when people are talking. I like hate hearing myself do that, so I just when in doubt shut up.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
well,
no, I appreciate it.
Sure. I mean, does that make sense?
I think so. Did you develop that consciously though, or is that something that it like came out as a result of a bunch of different things?
It's all everything about my playing has been developed subconsciously.
Yeah.
I mean, even like someone once commented on my kick drum foot, and they were like, "Oh, you slide your foot this way." And I was like, "I do," and like, "Yeah." Or did you learn that from watching so and so? And I'm like, "No, I mean, it just seemed to work."
Just do it. It works. It makes the sound I want. Yeah, I know. I got a bunch of those.
Some
good, some not.
I'm not. I wish I was a better student of technique. You know,
Me too.
Because much of what I do is accidental happenstance. If I'm completely honest, you know. But like I said, it's like Grant Menifee said, "Oh yeah, the power comes from that last second whip of the wrist and the snap of the fingers." I went, "Okay," and yeah, that's kind of the thing. It's like I'm very fortunate to have several students. Like I have like students, and we talk about all sorts of different things.
Yeah,
but primarily when I talk about technique, it's about how I accidentally discovered this thing or that thing. You know, and I am not the guy who says there's my way and the wrong way.
right.
Like I'm completely not that guy, you know, and I know guys who are that guy and they're more experienced and they're more learned than I am about particular techniques and particular methods, but I'm not that way because like I said, a lot of what I discovered, I sort of discovered, you know, haphazardly.
Yeah, I am somebody who would like, I've had to relearn some things because it's like I would figure something out and it would sort of work, but I would cause myself an injury somehow. So it's good that you've developed things that didn't do that.
And that can happen. I've been fortunate to have instructors who would say like, "Oh, like you're going to hurt yourself if you do that or if you do this," and so they have directed me along the way. So I don't mean to make it as though I was born in a vacuum, had a pair of sticks, developed this great technique. That's not what I mean at all. I just mean that I was never like, well, that's it. I mean, I watch guys like Jojo Mayer, and he has like the most impeccable hands in the world. I was never that guy.
Oh, he can explain it to you like from a physics and standpoint.
Correct.
Yeah, all the mechanics of everything he's doing. I know.
Correct. And I know guys who are that way. I mean, like I know guys who are that way, and I have the utmost respect for them. It just it didn't happen to be the way that I sort of learned growing up.
Yeah, no, I didn't either. I didn't really ever like, I feel like technique was all learned on my own. I learned growing up primarily by watching other people. And then I got instruction on kind of how to, like, what to practice, but not in specific technical terms.
Right.
Like it was all, I got that Jojo Mayer hand technique DVD because I didn't know what was going on. And really was my younger brother had it because he was a drummer. And he was into this thing, and I'd heard of Jojo Mayer, and then I watched, and I was like, I don't need all that shit, you know. And then I watched it.
And again, too, it's funny. I should really point out, like, again, Jojo Mayer is like a freak. Like what he does is amazing. Like what he does is amazing, and I've seen him do it up close. I've been in the same room and watched him do it.
I saw him do a clinic, and
I marvel. So I don't. Make no mistake, like any of the folks that I'm just like, I don't do what that is, by no means interpret that as a poo-pooing of me doing what they do.
Right.
It's more like me saying they're doing it. I'm a Neanderthal and they're doing it on like an astrophysics level that I can only sort of look up at and go, Okay.
Well, sure. Yeah, no. I mean, there's a reason that I turn to those guys because I don't know, and I don't think that I know that stuff. I don't think that I intuitively understand it or have put the work in and figured it out.
About technique. I ask Isaiah. Like he's like Isaiah has forgotten more about technique than I will ever know.
Oh, I bet he's a very technical player, and it just seems so natural.
Dude, I went to see him play. So they recently built pre-COVID. They recently built a venue out here very close to my house. About literally, I could walk there.
Yeah,
and it's called the Canyon, and it's a venue in a mall because I live in a shop. Like I live in a suburb, so everything is related to the shopping mall. But even the concert venues, right?
Yep.
But the Canyon is in my local mall, and I went and I saw him play with. I want to get this right. There's two factions. Black Flag.
Yep.
There's Flag, and there's Black Flag.
Yeah, he plays with Black Flag.
Yes, because there was a little bit.
Yeah,
of a
there's
split.
a rift, right?
Like a rift, exactly.
And Flag is like the old, like most of the band.
Flag is everyone but the guitarist.
Yep.
And then Black Flag is the guitarist with none of the other original guys.
Yep.
Because he owns the name.
Yes, and the original guys too have been like it's been rotating forever, but there's like kind of a classic lineup in period.
Right.
I would say generally the Henry Rollins days.
Correct. So I saw Isaiah's with Black Flag at my local venue, the Canyon.
Yep.
And was blown away.
Yep.
The dude is awesome.
He's so good, man.
So my only point is that yes, like Isaiah's technique, JoJo's technique, so many guys I have the utmost respect for and sort of look up to and go like, wow, I really admire the fact that you guys have really pushed it, that far. So yeah.
Well,
much
I think
respect.
Yeah, I've watched videos of that. I mean, any time I've ever seen him play, it's really blown me away. And also, I mean, that would be I would like to see that band. Also, the other thing, like I have JoJo's pedal that he designed. I've had a pair of his signature sticks, but I saw a clinic. And the dude is like 2 feet shorter than me. It's like there's like that counts for something, the mechanics of how your arm works.
That's funny because I'll mention this. I chatted to someone recently, and we were joking about when people at drum clinics ask, "What size stick do you play?"
Yeah.
And that's like a thing. It's like a common question, which is fine. But at the same time, it's like, well, I'm 5'10", 170 pounds. My arm is this long. My hand is this size. My fingers are this size. So the size stick that I play might not necessarily be the right stick for you if you're 6'3", 230 pounds, and your arm is this much long. But I get why people ask it. And I do understand. And I did the same thing because it's your hero. And so in part, like with Steve Gadd, I wanted to know like, oh, I want to try the Steve Gadd stick when I was growing up. I want to try the Weckel stick when I was growing up. But at the same time, your point is a good one, which is that, yes, buying or investing time in that person's stick or that person's pedal might not result in you having that person's technique or facility.
Oh, no, it doesn't. And it's interesting too with the JoJo stick because it's like a short 5B. It's like thick, but it's short, and it's like really snappy. But it's like I think it's it's shorter than a normal 5B because his arms are shorter.
Sure.
And that makes perfect sense for him. It's like completely aligned with his body, and I can use it in a way that makes sense for me. But it's like not. My arms are much longer, so it doesn't make sense in the same way.
Well, and not only that, but like even his style of play, JoJo doesn't hit super crazy hard.
Yeah.
And what he does relies on a lot of small muscle movements, right? Whereas, like, for example, what I do relies on a lot of big muscle movements. and my stick is longer and it's a little bit top heavy because I want to feel like I'm throwing some weight around. But that's not the ideal stick to play if you want to go and play drum and bass.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Because the balance is totally wrong.
Stuff.
Like the balance is not good for that. The balance is good for if you want to throw weight around and you really want to like rock a hardcore 2 and 4.
Yeah.
Which is what I do.
That's
what I try to do anyway.
I have a habit of, I don't even know why I do it at this point, but my snare stick, I hold it upside down. And like really the reason is just to like whack the snare drum.
Traditional?
But not as a main thing. Like, yeah, I do play it, but
I only asked because
it may come from that.
I saw, the first person I ever saw do it was Gad.
Yeah.
Gad would play trad grip with the butt end of the stick in his left hand.
Oh.
Or he would play the butt end of the stick in his left hand. He would play it backwards. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So you're as like you're Gad.
Well, no, I'm not. Definitely not.
You're Gad.
I am. Yes.
You are Gad.
I'm glad we've come to this conclusion. I've got a lot to think about now. But yeah,
how about this? There's a special. By the way, we have to bring this in for a landing at some point. But
I know.
There used to be a show on TV called Rock School.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a band, and it was like a rhythm section. And each episode, they would analyze a different style of music and talk about what made it that or whatever. And so they would be like, "Oh, we're talking about reggae." It was on the BBC. So like the bass player would say, "Right, so in reggae music, the emphasis in bass is on the 3." And then he would play like do 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 do. Right. And the whole point of that story is within like the reggae episode, they would go and they would interview certain reggae musicians. And I'll never forget, there was a cat, I think it was the drummer for Steel Pulse, played with 2 different size sticks. His cross stick, his left hand that played the cross stick was like a 2B.
Yeah, big thick
And
one.
his right hand that played the hi-hat was like a 7A.
Weird.
So like
yeah. So a
it's all
super
light,
light stick on the
but the
hi-hat,
cross
super
stick was
heavy
like,
stick on the snare. Yeah.
God, it was brilliant.
I mean, it's funny. To me, the weirder thing is the 7A, but I guess it's like if you want that. I bought a pair of 7As, hadn't used them since high school. I was like doing a jazz thing last year, and I bought a pair of 7As, and I was like, wow, I hate these. But I mean, it makes sense if you want to be quick, I guess, on the hi-hat and not light.
Just lighter. Just a light and more sticky sound. And then the 2B for the cross stick for like that really chunky, wood blocky cross stick, And the idea of like sort of purpose building to that degree was mind blowing to me.
Yeah.
Like the idea that you would go to the guitar center or to the drum store and be like, "Hi, I'd like 3 pair of 2Bs and 3 pair of 7As."
Yeah.
And then you would split those up, and that would be the way that you would play drums.
Yeah.
I've always been an admirer of different perspectives, like a different way to approach something, and to me, that's a serious commitment.
I agree.
It has nothing to do with technique or chops or any of it. It's just purpose built. My left hand is doing this particular thing, and it's not going to go around the kit. I don't want that. I want it to be a big, chunky cross stick.
Yep.
And my right hand is being nice and light on top of that. I'm a 7A.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. I agree. I appreciate that. I remember a couple of years ago seeing with this indie band, this drummer had he might have not even had a tom, but if he did, he only had one tom and like a big snare, and using 2 crashes as hi-hats. No other cymbals.
He had like a Roland sample pad.
Mm-hmm.
And so his hi-hats were also his crash and his ride.
Mm-hmm.
He had like maybe one tom, maybe not even a tom. Maybe the snare did all of it and then the sample pad was everything else. And it just was so cool. I talked to him after the show about it, and he said he put it together for playing with this band for this gig. For that reason.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's cool.
So what else you got for me on the docket?
Oh, I don't know. I think at this point, I had a bunch of like, how'd you do this? But let's instead substitute all of that for if you like any like golden nuggets of advice or wisdom just about getting gigs in general. So you were somebody who moved from one side of the country to the other and have found yourself with it seems to be plentiful gigs, good gigs. What's your secret? That's that's like kind of a bold question.
So when I was in high school, I grew up part of my life outside of Baltimore, Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
And Baltimore, Maryland is home to numerous outstanding musicians, but from that region comes Dennis Chambers.
Wow.
Who we all know and love. And then there was another drummer there, a legend. And then there was another drummer there named Larry Bright. And Larry Bright, his career path didn't take him on sort of the same high profile sort of path that Dennis did, but was of a similar ilk, like grew up in similar surroundings, playing in a similar style. I took a lesson or three with Larry Bright. And at one point I asked Larry Bright, I said, man, Larry, how did you develop your single strokes? And he said, man, there's no secret. I get up in the morning, I play single strokes on a pillow as fast as I can, as long as I can, until I can't hold the sticks anymore and they fall out of my hands. Then I take a 10-minute break and I do it again. And that's what I do all day. Okay? So.
Whoa.
Right. So that is my context or my setup to the answering of your question, which was, what's your secret? And the reality is, I don't have a secret. My method is, somewhere along my path, someone said to me, listen to as much music as you possibly can, play as many styles as you possibly can, with as many different musicians as you possibly can, and as much as you can, stay in touch and stay connected with them. And that's my secret.
Yeah.
It's not really a secret.
No.
It's just what I did. Now, the thing is, the context by which people meet musicians, play with musicians, record the musicians, work with musicians, is very different now with the internet, because I predated the internet. So I was actually sending people emails, and I was actually going out and looking for gigs as it transitioned from send me your demo CD to send me links.
Yeah.
Like the beginning of my career, it was send me your demo. And I had a demo CD that was probably about 5 minutes long, and it probably included 20 little snippets of me playing a bunch of different styles. And over the course of my career, it evolved to send me links.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you have
so
a
that
YouTube channel,
that aspect, exactly. So that aspect is different, but I feel like at its basis, I feel like at its heart, it's still the same. It's still, listen. And again, mind you, that's me. Like, I wanted to play as many styles as I could. I was kind of, ADHD, like playing one thing or playing like one 16-song set list for 2.5 consecutive years would have probably driven me out of my mind.
Right.
And so it's funny that I found my way here. Now, along that path, when I was at school, when I graduated, one of the first bands that I ever played with was a band that did weddings and played probably 50% calypso music. So I'm learning to do that, right? And then over my time spent with that band, they sort of started to evolve and play more and more top 40.
Mm-hmm.
And concurrent with that band, I was playing with another cover band that played primarily heavier rock, that played Nine Inch Nails and Stone Temple Pilots and Pearl Jam.
Interesting.
Right? So yeah, go ahead.
This is another. This is another one of the questions that of interest to me is like, how do you keep track of all those tunes? How do you learn them in a hurry? Is that easy for you?
Well, I mean, I think that initially when I was getting material to learn that I had not heard before, it required more involvement, commitment, more like, let me dig into this, what's going on here. But then it started to be like, let me get the important parts. Let me get the finer, let me get the more coarse grain, and then the finer details, I'll just allow myself to fill in. Because most people who are coming out and hearing you play Vaseline by Stone Temple Pilots at a rock club,
they're
not really dialed. Yeah, they're not dialed that into exactly what Phil Eric Kretz played on the third chorus going into the pre-chorus going into the chorus. So you're
you can kind of guess what the
leeway.
fills are too in a lot of
sure,
the songs.
and as long as you're within a certain bandwidth, you're probably good, and that allowed me to learn songs faster because it allowed me to give myself the liberty to simply listen to what the bass player is playing, play something that made sense with that, and when fills came around, play a fill that seemed idiomatically correct.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So, I've got a really good friend, Tasha Jones. She's my sister. Like, she's literally my sister. But she's a drummer. And at one point, she sent me something and said, "Hey, Nate, what's this drummer doing here on this fill?" And I was like, I don't know. It's a bunch of 16th notes. Right? So to me, it could be bang, or it could be bang. It's the emotion, it's the feeling, it's the vibe of what that fill is. So having said all that, I have played much of my career in a cover band, air quotes, cover band circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been playing always anyway with the artist. Now, if I'm playing with the artist, as I did not too long ago when I did some gigs with an artist named Santa Gold.
Oh, cool.
Sure. Like Santi, she is way more like, I know my records.
Yeah.
I know what that fill is. It needs to be that fill.
And it's pretty kind of specific, kind of groove
very
stuff.
Specific. Or I played with, I had the good fortune of playing with Don Felder from the Eagles.
Oh,
and
really?
Literally at the outset of working with Don Felder, he was like, "Nate, everybody knows what all the fills are. You need to play them spot on or the gig will sound wrong."
Oh, wow.
So I said, okay. So in that case, yes, you dig in much more. You transcribe the fill. You learn exactly what it is and you play it spot on. But for the most part, that has been a smaller percentage of what I've done. And the greater percentage of what I've done has been, a situation where either A, maybe you're not playing with the actual artist, or B, even if you are playing with the actual artist, you have a little bit more leeway to sort of allow yourself to come through in the music that you're playing.
Yeah, because I'm someone who likes an improvisational element anyway. I don't want it to be the same every time. I don't want to go see the band and they play it the same way it is on the record.
Right. Listen to the record.
Yeah, exactly. What are you there for if it's not energy?
A little bit, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've always felt like the live show should be the record and then some.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me, and I'm treading a little bit into the weeds right now, and maybe I shouldn't, but it's interesting to me when an artist wants the exact sounds on the record, to the extent that the drummer is playing sample pads of the exact sound on the record.
Yeah.
I'm old school. And so to me, going to a concert has never meant an exact replica of the record because I own the record.
Mm-hmm.
To me, going to a concert has meant I want to hear and experience some new elements.
That's what I think
know.
too. I want to hear it. I don't want to hear it exactly the same way. I want to hear something different. I want to hear a different take on it. Because also, it's like you think about it, you're not in the room where the record was made. There's different, the people are not in the same configuration. There's a different, everything is different. A million little things are different.
Right. My all-time favorite band in history is Fishbone.
Really? Interesting. They're like a
Fishbone.
ripping band. I have friends who are like hardcore fans. I'm somebody who is like, there's some of it that I quite like and some of it that I like. I don't get it.
Fishbone, to me.
Yep.
You've not heard Fishbone until you see them live.
Oh, I believe it.
And that remains to this day. Like literally, those guys are older than me. They're in their late 40s, 50s, maybe. But I still maintain you have not seen or you have not heard Fishbone until you see them live. So the live show, the records are awesome. The band is awesome. The songs are awesome. I love the band. All of it. I'm a giant devotee. But literally, the records are awesome. The live show is an experience. And so that's the cloth from which I am cut. I want the live show to be a new experience that you take home with you in memories that forever sort of, I don't know, live.
Yeah, you were there. You take that with you. You again, I think it is about movement and transfer of energy. That would be a band to see live, man, because I think that it's a thick sound. It's a lot of sound coming from those musicians. That drummer's amazing. The energy, and Angelo is like a true artist, maniac, weirdo, genius, right?
Totally.
Yeah. Cool. All right. I feel like
what you got left, Ryan?
I have one more question for you. How do you tune your bass drum so low? How do you tune your bass drum?
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Then ask it again because I thought you were joking. Ask it again.
How do you tune your bass drum?
Kick drum tuning. So basically the batter side head, actually both heads are tuned finger tight.
Yep.
Literally just beyond wrinkles. So if I have to use a key, or I'm very, very, very blessed to have an incredible drum tech named Gravy. Yeah. So if he has to use a key, it's literally just slightly beyond wrinkles. And Gravy prefers it a little bit more open.
Why Gravy?
I prefer it. I prefer it a little bit more controlled.
Yeah.
Because when it's a little bit more open, it's bigger. But it's not as easy to control in a mix. Whereas when it's a little bit more controlled, you can still get the snap of the attack, but you can sort of dial in how much you want it to overtake the low end of a mix.
Now, when you say open, you mean like it's got more ring versus controlled, it would have a shorter decay?
Correctamundo. Correct. Yeah. For example, the kick drum that you see behind me, like you actually see, you can even actually see the pillow sort of sticking out of that port. So whereas like Gravy might have had like a towel, like a rolled towel on each head.
Gotcha.
Like that kind of vibe. And neither one is right or wrong. I mean, for me, I'm more used to living in a world where it sort of needs to be controlled, and that's kind of my approach.
To me, it's like it's like a really deep sound, but it's not flappy. It's like it's really thick. And toms, I would say, are the same thing, but it's just so it's loose. And so, fresh heads, or do you leave them on there forever, or what?
I'm lazy, So in my room here, I have heads that have been on that kit. I mean, the heads on that kit might have been the heads that came on that kit.
Right.
Whereas on the show,
I don't replace them unless I have to. Usually, but.
we change them more frequently on the show. We
Sure.
and that's a product of it needing to be fresh, bright, punchy. And in here, I'm a little lazier, and so I allow myself a little more leeway to be lazy.
I think recording is a huge thing, right? If it's got to be recorded and then broadcast, like that's a different expectation than.
Correct. And, there's an extent to where when you record in a studio, my experience is you spend a lot of the time drying out the sound. Like you spend a lot of the time like, oh, let's dampen this. Oh, let's tape this. Let's put this handkerchief over this. And so you spend a lot of time drying it out. So what I do in here is record. I'm not playing live shows in here.
Yeah.
Right? I'm recording in here. And so the sort of deader, if you will, drier, heads on the configuration as it is, work in here for me. In the TV studio, when you're aiming for a live performance impact, you don't want that. You don't want the mid 70s recording studio Steely Dan drum sound. You want it to jump out of the freaking what's the Axios? What's the
sound bar?
What's the sound bar thing?
Yeah.
Not Axios. What is it?
Oh, I don't know.
I can't think of it either. But like you want it to blitz out of there with some razor sharpness. So it's you're going for two different end results.
Yeah. Cool. That's like definitely a nerd question from me. So I appreciate that.
That's okay. We're drummers, man. Drummers are nerds by default.
Yeah. You have to be. Yeah, exactly. I'm the guy with the 70s, although they're in the other room now. I used to only have one living room. Now I got my stuff spread out over two. But like the 70s Sansui speakers. And then in here, it's, for better sound, I did have some like just monitors that I use for like recording. But they couldn't stay up here all the time. And then so more recently, it's been a Bluetooth speaker plugged in via aux jack to the TV. Because I can't do the TV speaker sound. All right. Thank you so much for your time, sir. What an absolute treat.
All good.
I mean, what more can I say than that? Really appreciate you taking the time. It's great to get to talk to you. I really supremely appreciate your patience with all the technical stuff. I can't believe it, man. It's like, I'm glad that you were so positive and also we're going to fix this, but also just on top of it from a technical perspective, not I don't know what any of this stuff is, but on it. Because there was a certain point where I was like, if this wasn't funny, if we weren't able to laugh about how this is funny right now, I'd be
like, what the fuck are you doing, man?
I would be so embarrassed.
Man.
And
I could never do that. I could never do that. Sorry.
Oh yeah.
All good, Ryan.
I appreciate your apology.
I'm good, man. Hey, listen, I'm glad that we got it together.
Yeah, me too. Cool. All right. Well, thanks so much for taking the time, man. I'm going to hit this stop recording here.
All right. Huge thanks to Nate for being here. Thanks so much to Isaiah. Thanks to you for listening. These shows are getting longer and longer. Luckily, podcasts operate on a data plan, and this is my only one for January, so I'm not going to crash it. It's kind of interesting, I thought, anyhow. Nate is on the other side of the continent, playing this really famous TV show. I'm here in my home in St. John. And yet the degrees of separation, obviously I talked to the guy, so it's less anyway, but He went to Berklee. He studied with Ian Froman, who we talked about. Ian Froman's a drummer he was one of my favorite guys who would come and play when I was a young jazz student myself. But also, Ian Froman's from Ottawa. He played in bands with Mike Murley, who is from Windsor, Nova Scotia, which, if you don't know, is an hour outside of Halifax, where I lived for years. So, it's a big world, but it's a small world. I was thinking about that recently. I read a book about Joni Mitchell. It's called Reckless Daughter. Really great read, interesting tale. And, there are a lot of things, as I was reading about her career, I was like, man, it was such a different time. And in some ways, things are better. I think certainly socially in the world, things are better. But especially right now, you can't tour. And, economically, the industry has really changed. Whereas in that time, you were making records and that's where you made your money. Now you make the record, you make your name, and you make the money selling everything else. And like, man, that's like, it seems so distant. And then I think, like, I know Jerry Granelli. Jerry Granelli knows Robin Ford. Robin Ford played in Joni Mitchell's band and introduced her to Jaco Pastorius. That's like 4 degrees of separation. Anyhow, food for thought. Thanks for being here. Once again, show notes, etc. at learndrums.ca. Learn Drums on Instagram. I do other stuff, but it's all linked there. See you next time. We'll be back in 2 weeks. If you're bored, check out the archives. We got over 50 episodes for you to listen to. All kinds of cool cats. See you in 2 weeks.